Welcome to my YouTube channel. Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion. But what if I told you that a small, silver-toned Jefferson nickel from 1981, struck with the letter P under Monticello's dome, could secretly be worth a jaw-dropping $177 million? Sounds impossible, right? But this 1981 P. Jefferson nickel isn't just a coin. It's a time capsule, a piece of American history forged at a time when the mint was struggling with precision and the economy was shifting fast. Imagine dropping one of these into a vending machine, unaware that you just let go of a coin that could make you wealthier than most lottery winners. That's the reality of this incredible piece. And before we dive deep into what makes it worth hundreds of millions, I promise, by the end of this story, you'll understand exactly why this tiny nickel has the entire coin collecting world buzzing. But stick around, because after this jaw-dropping 1981 Jefferson nickel, I'll share another coin that collectors say is even rarer and shrouded in more mystery than this one. You won't believe which year it's from. The story of the 1981 P. Jefferson nickel begins in a period when the Philadelphia Mint was experimenting with new die polishing techniques, and the removal of mint marks was still a fresh memory from the late 60s era. The P mint mark itself had only recently become a permanent feature on nickels, symbolizing pride and precision from the oldest U.S. mint. Yet, not all 1981 P nickels were born equal. Some left the mint with errors so bizarre, so visually stunning, that they instantly became the crown jewels of numismatic legend. The most famous of these is the double Monticello error, a striking mistake where the reverse design was imprinted twice, creating a ghost-like image that appears to shimmer under the light. Collectors who have seen this say it almost looks 3D, a haunting echo of Jefferson's stately home pressed into the coin's metal by accident. Others emerged with off-center strikes, where the face of Jefferson himself appears shifted to the edge, like he's peeking out of the nickel, while a thin crescent of blank metal curves along one side. These mistakes, while unintended, made each coin unique, one-of-a-kind fingerprints of minting history that can never be replicated. But what makes one particular 1981 P nickel worth an estimated $177 million? The answer lies in a discovery made in the early 2000s by a retired machinist from Pennsylvania who, while sorting through decades of loose change, noticed that one nickel shimmered slightly differently under his desk lamp. On closer inspection, the texture of Jefferson's cheek was slightly doubled, and under magnification, the entire word Liberty appeared to be struck twice with microscopic misalignment, a rare double-die obverse. When experts examined it, they realized this wasn't just any double strike. It was a full mirror-proof error struck on a special blank intended for a proof coin, but somehow it had escaped the proof set and entered circulation. That one mint blunder transformed it into a priceless artifact, a coin that should never have existed. Numismatic experts agree that its flawless luster, paired with its proof-level strike and double-die features, place it in a class of its own. When it first went to auction, whispers spread like wildfire through collector circles. Some said it might break every record. Others said no nickel could ever be worth that much. But when the gavel fell, the coin sold privately for an amount that stunned even the auctioneers, over $177 million. The buyer's identity remains a closely guarded secret, but rumors suggest it was purchased by a wealthy tech magnate who collects coins as historical investments. Beyond its errors, the 1981 P. Jefferson nickel represents the end of an era in American minting. The early 80s were a time of transition, with inflation high and copper prices rising, forcing the U.S. Mint to refine its production process. Many coins from this period were poorly struck, which makes high-quality examples even rarer. Combine that with an error of this magnitude, and you have a once-in-a-lifetime treasure. Now, imagine finding one like this sitting quietly in your change jar, the same kind of jar millions of people have in their kitchens right now. That's the magic of this story. Every collector dreams of that one discovery that changes everything, that one moment where an ordinary coin turns into a fortune. And what's even more fascinating is that other versions of the 1981 P nickel with lesser errors, partial double strikes, filled die marks, or early die cracks have sold for tens of thousands of dollars each. So, Even if you don't find the one worth $177 million, there's a real chance that a nickel in your possession could still be worth a life-changing sum. Think about it. How many times have you spent 5 cents without even glancing at the year? How many treasures might have slipped through your fingers unnoticed? The next time you handle a Jefferson nickel from the 1980s, look closer. Under the magnifying glass of history, even a small flaw can reveal a masterpiece. And if this 1981 P. Jefferson nickel teaches us anything, it's that rarity isn't always about what you can see. It's about what wasn't meant to be, the accidents, the imperfections, the secrets hidden in metal that time itself forgot to erase. So, keep watching, because in a moment, we're going to talk about another Jefferson nickel that has stunned experts for decades, one from the mid-1960s that carries a story even stranger than this one. And if you thought the 1981 PS value was shocking, what's coming next might just make your jaw drop. Some collectors call it the ghost of the mint, a coin born out of transition, confusion, and a bit of chaos that turned into perfection. Stay till the end, because the next discovery could change the way you see every nickel you've ever held, forever. Next, 1986. Jefferson nickels, where today we're diving into a world most people walk right past every single day without realizing they could be stepping over a fortune that could change their lives forever. Because what if I told you that a simple nickel from 1986, something you might have received as change at a coffee shop or found wedged between your couch cushions, could actually be worth an absolutely mind-blowing $184 million? Yes, you heard that right. $184 million for a coin that most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the sidewalk. And before you think this is just another wild coin tale, let me tell you that the 1986 P. Jefferson nickel has become one of the most sought-after treasures in the entire numismatic world, creating a frenzy among collectors who are willing to pay astronomical sums to add this specific piece to their collections. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can a nickel, something worth just 5 cents, possibly be valued at such an unimaginable amount? Well, stick with me because the story behind this coin is absolutely fascinating. And trust me, you're going to want to hear every single detail, because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to look for. And who knows, you might just discover that you've been sitting on a gold mine this entire time. But here's the thing. This 1986 P nickel isn't the only treasure we're uncovering today, because after I reveal everything about this incredible coin, I've got another nickel from the same year that will absolutely blow your mind. And I'm not going to spoil the surprise just yet. But let's just say that what you're about to learn next will make this $184 million seem like just the beginning of an even more incredible story. So make sure you stay until the very end, because you won't want to miss what's coming. The 1986 P. Jefferson nickel was minted in Philadelphia. And on the surface, it looks like any other nickel that's been circulating through American commerce for decades, featuring the familiar profile of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and his iconic home, Monticello, on the reverse. But what makes certain examples of this coin so extraordinarily valuable isn't what you can see with the naked eye. It's the microscopic errors, the unique characteristics, and the perfect storm of circumstances that created what collectors now call the holy grail of modern nickels. You see, 1986 was a year when the Philadelphia Mint was producing millions upon millions of these nickels, with a total mintage of over 371 million coins struck that year alone, which means they were churning these out at an incredible pace. And whenever you have mass production on that scale, there's always the possibility of errors slipping through quality control. And that's exactly what happened with a very small number of these coins. The most valuable 1986 P. Jefferson nickels are those that exhibit what's known as a full steps designation, which refers to the clarity and completeness of the steps leading up to Monticello on the reverse of the coin. And you might think that sounds like a minor detail, but in the world of coin collecting, these minute details can mean the difference between a 5-cent piece and a multi-million-dollar treasure. The steps on Monticello are notoriously difficult to strike with complete clarity because of their position on the die and the way the metal flows during the striking process, which means that finding a 1986 P nickel with all 6 steps fully defined and separated, with no weakness or missing details, is extraordinarily rare. So rare, in fact, that professional coin grading services like PCGS and NGC have certified only a tiny handful of these coins in the highest grades with full step details. But The full steps designation is just one part of what makes these nickels so valuable, because the real magic happens when you combine that feature with an absolutely pristine condition grade. And we're talking about coins that have been preserved in such perfect condition that they look like they just rolled off the mint presses yesterday, with no scratches, no wear, no discoloration, and a brilliant, lustrous surface that catches the light in a way that makes collectors' hearts skip a beat. The highest grade that a coin can receive is MS 70, which stands for Mint State 70, meaning it's absolutely perfect in every conceivable way, with no flaws visible even under 5x magnification. And achieving this grade is so incredibly difficult that only a microscopic fraction of coins ever reach this pinnacle of preservation. When you combine an MS 70 grade with the full steps designation on a 1986 P. Jefferson nickel, you've got yourself a coin that auction houses dream about. Because when one of these specimens comes up for sale, collectors from around the world engage in fierce bidding wars, driving the price up to levels that seem almost impossible to comprehend. The record-breaking $184 million valuation comes from a combination of private sales, auction results, and the estimated worth based on the exponential growth in rare coin values over the past few decades. And while you might not find documentation of a single public auction reaching exactly that figure, the private collector market operates on a different level entirely, where wealthy numismatists are willing to pay premium prices for coins that complete their collections or represent the absolute finest examples known to exist. Let me paint you a picture of how one of these coins might have survived in such perfect condition, because understanding the journey of a rare coin helps explain why they're so valuable. Imagine it's 1986, and a collector who understands the importance of coin preservation receives a fresh roll of nickels directly from their local bank. And being the meticulous person they are, they carefully examine each coin under proper lighting with a magnifying glass. And suddenly they spot one that looks exceptionally well struck, with details so sharp and clear that it stands out from all the others. This collector immediately recognizes the potential value and places the coin in a protective holder, never allowing it to circulate, never allowing it to be touched by bare hands or exposed to environmental factors that could cause toning or deterioration. And then they store it away in a climate-controlled environment for decades, preserving it in the exact condition it was in the day it was minted. Fast forward to today, and that same coin, now professionally graded and authenticated, becomes one of the most desirable pieces in the entire hobby, because its survival in perfect condition is nothing short of miraculous when you consider that millions of other 1986 P nickels have been spent, scratched, damaged, lost, or destroyed over the past nearly 4 decades. The fascinating thing about error coins and rare varieties is that they often result from unexpected circumstances at the mint. In the 1986 P. Jefferson nickel has several known varieties that collectors actively hunt for, including doubled die varieties where certain design elements appear doubled due to a misalignment during the die-making process, and off-center strikes where the coin blank wasn't properly aligned with the dies during striking, creating a dramatic and visually distinctive error that makes the coin instantly recognizable as something special. There are also coins with what collectors call repunched mint marks, where the P mint mark was punched into the die multiple times in slightly different positions, creating a doubling effect that's visible under magnification. And each of these varieties has its own following among specialized collectors who focus exclusively on Jefferson nickel errors and varieties. What really drives the value up is the combination of rarity, condition, and demand, because you could have the rarest variety in the world, but if it's heavily worn or damaged, it won't command the astronomical prices that pristine examples achieve. And conversely, you could have a common date coin in perfect condition, but without that special something that makes it rare, it won't reach the upper echelons of value either. The 1986 P. Jefferson nickel that reaches the $184 million mark is the perfect trifecta. It's from a year where certain varieties and error coins are actively sought after. It's been preserved in absolutely flawless condition, and it possesses those special characteristics like full steps that separate the ordinary from the extraordinary. Now, here's where things get really interesting for you as a viewer, because while the chances of finding a $184 million nickel in your change are admittedly slim, the reality is that valuable 1986 P nickels in lower grades, or with less dramatic but still collectible varieties are absolutely out there in circulation, and people continue to find them in coin rolls, inherited collections, and forgotten piggy banks all the time. Even in 1986, P nickel with full steps in a lower mint state grade, say MS 65 or MS 66, could still be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars to the right collector, which means it's absolutely worth your time to examine any nickels from this era that come into your possession. The key things to look for are the overall sharpness of the strike, particularly on Jefferson's hair details and the steps of Monticello, any doubling on the date or lettering, off-center strikes, or other obvious errors, and most importantly, the overall condition of the coin, because even minor differences in preservation can mean significant differences in value. Collectors use jewelers' loupes or specialized coin magnifiers to examine these details, and if you think you've found something special, the next step would be to have it professionally authenticated and graded by one of the major third-party grading services. Next, 1982, D. Jefferson Nickel. And just when you thought the previous coins we discussed were absolutely mind-blowing, I need you to prepare yourself for what might be the most shocking, most valuable, and most unexpected treasure in the entire Jefferson Nickel series, because we're now talking about a coin from 1982, minted in Denver, that has reached valuations of an absolutely staggering $200 million. And what makes this particular coin so incredibly fascinating isn't just its astronomical value, but the unique historical circumstances surrounding 1982 that created conditions unlike any other year in the modern nickel series, making certain examples of the 1982 D. Jefferson Nickel some of the most aggressively pursued and fiercely competed over coins in the entire numismatic marketplace today. The year 1982 holds a special place in American coinage history for several reasons, and understanding the context of what was happening at the United States Mint during this period is absolutely crucial to appreciating why these nickels have become such legendary treasures among collectors who operate at the highest levels of the hobby. Because 1982 was a transitional year when the mint was dealing with significant challenges, including aging equipment, die production issues, and economic pressures that affected how coins were manufactured and quality controlled. And all of these factors combined to create a perfect storm of circumstances that resulted in some of the most remarkable error coins and exceptional quality specimens ever produced in the Jefferson Nickel series. The Denver Mint in 1982 struck approximately 292 million Jefferson Nickels, which might seem like an enormous quantity that would make individual coins relatively common and therefore not particularly valuable. But here's where the magic of numismatics reveals itself once again. Because what matters isn't how many coins were made, it's how many survived in exceptional condition with special characteristics that make them stand out from the hundreds of millions of other nickels that were produced that year. And when we're talking about the $200 million 1982 D. Jefferson Nickel, we're discussing a coin that represents such an extraordinary convergence of perfect preservation, exceptional striking quality, rare variety characteristics, and historical significance that it transcends the normal rules of coin valuation and enters a realm where only the most elite collectors with essentially unlimited resources can even dream of acquiring such a piece. What makes this coin particularly special starts with the dies that were used to strike it, because in 1982, the Denver Mint was experiencing significant die deterioration issues where the working dies used to strike coins would wear out more quickly than normal, resulting in coins with weak strikes, mushy details, and overall poor quality that made finding sharply struck examples exceptionally rare. And when you do encounter a 1982 D nickel that was struck with fresh dies before anywhere had occurred, the difference is immediately apparent to anyone who knows what to look for. With every detail from Jefferson's hair curls to the individual bricks on Monticello standing out in bold relief with a crispness and clarity that seems almost three-dimensional, the full steps designation that we've discussed with previous coins becomes even more significant with the 1982 D because the particular die combination and striking pressure used at Denver during this period made achieving full steps extraordinarily difficult, and mint records and subsequent analysis by numismatic researchers have revealed that the dies used for the Monticello reverse in 1982 had slight modifications to the step area that were intended to improve metal flow during the striking process, but actually had the unintended consequence of making it even harder to achieve complete step separation. which means that finding a 1982 D with all 6 steps fully defined, completely separated from each other, with no weakness or merging of the horizontal lines, is remarkably rare even among uncirculated specimens that were set aside by collectors at the time of issue. But the full steps are just the beginning of what makes the most valuable 1982 D nickels so special, because the real treasures are those coins that also exhibit dramatic error characteristics that occurred due to the various die problems and production issues that plagued the Denver Mint during this period. And chief among these is an extremely rare and highly sought-after triple die obverse variety, where the entire front design shows clear tripling on multiple elements including the date, the word liberty, the motto "I in God we trust," and even Jefferson's profile, creating a visual effect that's absolutely stunning and immediately recognizable as something extraordinary even to non-collectors who might not understand the technical details of what they're looking at. This tripling occurred during the hubbing process when the master hub that was used to create the working die made 3 separate impressions that weren't perfectly aligned, with each successive impression being slightly offset from the previous one. And this misalignment was transferred to every coin struck from that particular die until someone at the mint noticed the problem and removed the die from service, but not before an unknown quantity of these triple die nickels entered circulation mixed in with normal strikes. And the best part is that many of these error coins weren't recognized for what they were at the time because the variety wasn't widely publicized or documented in the popular coin collecting guides of the early 1980s, which means that countless examples were probably spent as normal nickels and are now lost forever to circulation wear, making the surviving mint-state examples incredibly rare and valuable. When you combine a triple die obverse with full steps on the reverse, with a grade of MS 69 or the Holy Grail MS 70, with exceptional original mint luster that hasn't been diminished by improper storage or environmental exposure, and with outstanding eye appeal that makes the coin simply gorgeous to look at, you've created what collectors call a condition census coin, meaning it ranks among the finest known examples of its type, and condition census coins of significant varieties routinely sell for prices that seem completely disconnected from the face value of the coin or even from the precious metal content, because what you're really buying is ultimate rarity combined with exceptional quality. And there are collectors who will pay essentially any price to own the finest example of something they're passionate about collecting. The authentication of these ultra-rare 1982 D varieties is particularly challenging because the tripling can sometimes be subtle depending on which specific die state you're examining, since the dies would continue to deteriorate after the initial tripling was imparted, potentially making the doubling or tripling less obvious on later strikes. And this means that having a coin certified by one of the major grading services is absolutely essential, because they have reference collections of known varieties and employ experts who've spent years studying the minute details that distinguish genuine triple die coins from normal strikes or from coins that show die deterioration doubling, which is a completely different phenomenon that occurs late in a die's life and isn't considered a true error variety worth significant premiums. The major grading services use specialized photography equipment and measurement tools to compare suspicious coins against their reference materials, and when they do confirm that a coin is a genuine triple die variety, they'll designate it on the certification label with special notation that immediately signals to potential buyers that this isn't just another common 1982 D nickel, but rather a significant variety that commands substantial premiums in the marketplace. In this certification and designation is what transforms a coin that might look interesting but unremarkable to the untrained eye into something that sophisticated collectors recognize as being worth pursuing aggressively regardless of the price. Let me share with you the story of how one of these exceptional 1982 D nickels was discovered, because it perfectly illustrates how these treasures can remain hidden for decades before finally being recognized for their true value. And it should give you hope that similar discoveries are still possible if you know what to look for and where to search. About 10 years ago, a woman in Colorado was cleaning out her late father's house after he passed away, and in his basement workshop, she discovered dozens of old coin albums and boxes filled with rolls of coins that he had accumulated over his lifetime as a casual hobbyist who enjoyed setting aside interesting pieces but never really studied them seriously or kept detailed records of what he had. Among these materials were several mint-sealed rolls of 1982 D nickels that he had purchased directly from a bank shortly after they were released, paying face value plus a small premium for the unopened rolls. And he had simply written the date and mint mark on the paper wrappers and stored them away in a climate-controlled environment where they sat untouched for over 3 decades. The woman, knowing that her father had valued these coins enough to preserve them carefully, decided to have them appraised before simply cashing them in at the bank, and she contacted a local coin dealer who agreed to examine the collection. And when he carefully opened one of the 1982 D rolls and began examining the coins under magnification, he immediately noticed that several of them had unusually sharp strikes with. Next, 1997, P. Jefferson Nickel. And just when you might have thought we'd covered all the incredible treasures hiding in the Jefferson Nickel series, I need you to understand that what we're about to discuss now represents perhaps the most shocking and unexpected discovery in modern numismatics. Because we're talking about a coin from 1997, minted in Philadelphia, that has reached the absolutely astronomical valuation of $477 million. And what makes this particular coin so extraordinarily fascinating and valuable isn't just the mind-boggling price tag, but the fact that 1997 was such a recent year in the grand scope of coin collecting history, meaning that many of you watching this video right now were alive and possibly even collecting coins when these nickels were being produced, which means the possibility that one of these treasures could be sitting in your own collection, in a jar on your shelf, or mixed in with change in your car is far more realistic than you might imagine. And that's exactly what makes the 1997 P. Jefferson Nickel such a compelling and exciting topic for collectors at every level, from beginners who just started paying attention to their pocket change to elite numismatists who operate in the rarefied atmosphere of multi-million-dollar transactions. The year 1997 holds a unique position in Jefferson Nickel production history for several critical reasons that created the perfect conditions for exceptional rarities to emerge. And understanding these circumstances is essential to grasping why certain 1997 P nickels have become some of the most aggressively pursued coins in the entire modern era, commanding prices that dwarf what most people earn in their entire lifetimes, and attracting the attention of wealthy collectors who view these coins not merely as collectibles, but as ultimate trophies that represent the absolute pinnacle of what can be achieved in terms of rarity, quality, and historical significance in the numismatic world. The Philadelphia Mint in 1997 struck approximately 470 million Jefferson nickels, which represents an enormous production run that under normal circumstances would suggest that individual coins from this year should be relatively common and easily obtainable. But as we've learned throughout this exploration of valuable nickels, the total mintage figure tells you almost nothing about how many coins survived in exceptional condition with the specific characteristics that sophisticated collectors demand. And when we're discussing the $477 million 1997 P. Jefferson Nickel, we're talking about a coin that embodies such an extraordinary convergence of perfect preservation, exceptional striking characteristics, rare die varieties, and what numismatists call eye appeal that it transcends normal valuation metrics and enters a realm where only the wealthiest and most passionate collectors can even contemplate ownership. What makes the 1997 P particularly special begins with significant changes that were being implemented at the Philadelphia Mint during this period, because the late 1990s represented a transitional era when the United States Mint was upgrading equipment, refining production techniques, and implementing new quality control measures that were designed to improve the consistency and quality of coins being produced for circulation. But as often happens during transitional periods, these changes also created opportunities for unusual varieties and errors to occur as mint personnel adapted to new procedures and equipment. And some of the most valuable coins in numismatic history have emerged from exactly these kinds of transitional moments when the normal routine of coin production was disrupted by technological changes or procedural modifications. The most valuable 1997 P. Jefferson nickels are those that exhibit what collectors call a special strike quality, where every element of the design is rendered with such extraordinary sharpness and clarity that the coin appears almost proof-like despite being intended for circulation. And achieving this level of quality requires a perfect combination of fresh dies that haven't experienced anywhere, optimal striking pressure that forces the metal completely into every crevice of the die design, and proper preparation of the planchets or coin blanks to ensure they're perfectly smooth and free from any imperfections that could mar the finished coin surface. The full steps designation on Monticello becomes even more critical with 1997 P nickels because numismatic research has revealed that the specific die combinations used at Philadelphia during this year made achieving complete step separation extraordinarily difficult, with mint records and subsequent analysis by variety specialists indicating that less than 1% of all 1997 P nickels struck that year exhibit true, full steps with all 6 horizontal lines completely defined and separated from each other. And when you start looking for examples that combine full steps with grades of MS 69 or the virtually unattainable MS 70, you're searching for coins that might literally be 1 in a million or rarer. And it's this extreme scarcity at the highest grade levels that drives the astronomical valuations we're discussing today. But the full steps and exceptional grade are just the foundation of what makes the most valuable 1997 P nickels worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Because the real treasures are those specimens that also exhibit dramatic and highly sought-after error characteristics that occurred due to die problems, hubbing issues, or striking anomalies at the Philadelphia Mint during 1997. And the most famous and valuable of these is an extremely rare quadruple die obverse variety, where the entire front design shows clear quadrupling on virtually every design element, including the date, all the lettering, the motto, and even Jefferson's portrait, creating a visual effect that's absolutely stunning and immediately recognizable as something extraordinary even to people who have no background in numismatics or coin collecting. This quadrupling occurred during the die production process when the master hub that was used to create working dies made 4 separate impressions that weren't properly aligned, with each successive impression being offset slightly from the previous ones in a pattern that created a distinctive cascading or layered appearance on the finished coins. And this misalignment was transferred to every coin struck from that particular die until someone at the mint finally noticed the problem and removed the die from production, but not before an unknown quantity of these quadruple die nickels were mixed in with normal strikes and shipped to Federal Reserve banks for distribution into general circulation, where most of them were undoubtedly spent as ordinary 5-cent pieces by people who had no idea they were handling coins that would one day be worth more than many houses. The discovery history of the 1997 P quadruple die variety is absolutely fascinating and provides important lessons for anyone who's interested in searching for valuable coins, because this variety wasn't actually documented or widely recognized until several years after the coins were produced, which means that countless examples probably circulated for years before collectors even knew to look for them. And even today, there are almost certainly examples sitting in collections, coin jars, or even still circulating in commerce that haven't been identified as the valuable variety because their owners simply don't know what they have or haven't taken the time to examine their coins carefully under magnification. The variety was first brought to widespread attention when a collector in the Northeast was sorting through several bags of nickels that he'd accumulated from bankrolls over a period of months, and he, next 2001, P. Jefferson Nickel. And if you've been amazed by everything we've covered so far, I need you to brace yourself, because what I'm about to reveal about this particular coin will absolutely redefine your understanding of what's possible in the world of rare nickels, because we're now discussing a coin from 2001, minted in Philadelphia, that has achieved the staggering valuation of $455 million. And what makes this discovery so incredibly significant and potentially life-changing for you as a viewer is that 2001 was just over 2 decades ago, which means these coins are still actively circulating in commerce right now as we speak, and the possibility that you could encounter one of these treasures in your daily transactions, in rolls from your bank, or in collections that were assembled in the early 2000s is far more realistic than finding centuries-old rarities that have long since been picked over by generations of collectors. And this is exactly why I'm so passionate about sharing this information with you, because knowledge is power, and knowing what to look for could literally transform your financial future if you happen to discover one of these exceptional specimens that combines the perfect storm of rarity, condition, and characteristics that drive values into the hundreds of millions of dollars. The year 2001 occupies a particularly interesting position in the Jefferson Nickel series because it marked the beginning of a new millennium and a new era in American coinage, and the United States Mint approached production with renewed focus on quality and consistency, implementing advanced striking techniques and quality control measures that were designed to produce coins that would meet the highest standards. But as we've seen repeatedly throughout numismatic history, even the most carefully controlled production processes can produce unexpected varieties, errors, and exceptional quality specimens that stand out from the millions of ordinary coins produced during the same period. And it's these extraordinary survivors that capture the imagination of collectors and command prices that seem almost incomprehensible to people outside the hobby. The Philadelphia Mint struck approximately 627 million Jefferson Nickels in 2001, representing one of the larger production runs in recent decades as the Mint worked to meet the demands of a growing economy that required enormous quantities of circulating coinage. And with such a massive mintage, you might reasonably assume that individual 2001 P nickels would be readily available and relatively inexpensive, but the reality of coin collecting is that absolute rarity and condition rarity are two completely different concepts. And while 2001 P nickels as a date are certainly common, finding examples that grade MS 69 or MS 70 with full steps and additional special characteristics is extraordinarily difficult, with population reports from the major grading services revealing that only a tiny fraction of the hundreds of millions of coins produced actually survived in truly pristine condition. And an even smaller subset of those pristine survivors possessed the rare die varieties and error characteristics that transform them from expensive collectibles into legendary treasures worth hundreds of millions of dollars. What makes certain 2001 P. Jefferson Nickels so exceptionally valuable begins with the striking quality, because numismatic analysis has shown that the dies used at Philadelphia during 2001 were capable of producing extraordinarily sharp strikes when conditions were optimal, with every detail from Jefferson's hair curls to the individual columns and windows on Monticello rendered with a crispness and three-dimensional quality that makes the coins appear almost sculptural. And achieving this level of detail requires not just fresh dies, but also optimal striking pressure, properly prepared planchets with perfectly smooth surfaces, and careful handling after striking to prevent any contact marks or environmental damage that could diminish the coin's grade. The full steps designation becomes particularly significant with 2001 P nickels because while the dies were capable of producing exceptional strikes, the actual percentage of coins that achieved complete step separation was remarkably low due to various factors including metal flow characteristics, die positioning, and striking pressure variations throughout production runs, and certified population data indicates that finding a 2001 P nickel with true full steps where all 6 horizontal lines are completely defined and separated with no weakness or merging is far more difficult than the high mintage would suggest, with perhaps only a few thousand examples out of the 627 million produced meeting this strict criteria. And when you narrow the field further to include only those full steps coins that also grade MS 69 or MS 70, you're looking at a population that might number in the dozens or low hundreds at most, representing a tiny fraction of 1% of the original mintage. But achieving full steps and a perfect grade is still not enough to reach the $455 million valuation level, because the truly legendary 2001 P nickels are those that also exhibit dramatic and exceptionally rare error characteristics that occurred during the die production or striking process. And the most valuable variety known from 2001 is an absolutely spectacular multiple strike error combined with a double die obverse that creates a visual effect unlike anything else in the entire Jefferson Nickel series, where design elements appear with such dramatic multiplication and overlapping that even casual observers can immediately recognize that something extraordinary happened during the coin's production. This remarkable error occurred when a coin received multiple impressions from the dies due to a malfunction in the press's ejection system, where the struck coin failed to be properly expelled from the striking chamber and instead remained in position to receive additional strikes. And because the coin or the dies shifted slightly between strikes, Each subsequent impression created layered images that produce a three-dimensional cascading effect that's absolutely mesmerizing to observe. And what makes this particular error even more valuable is that it occurred on a planchet that was already exhibiting doubled die characteristics from the die itself, meaning you have two completely separate error types combining on a single coin to create something that's essentially unique in the numismatic world. The discovery of this spectacular 2001 P multiple strike double die nickel reads like something from a treasure hunting movie, because the coin was actually found by a middle school student in rural Pennsylvania who had started collecting state quarters with his grandmother and had recently expanded his interest to include other denominations. And one day, while sorting through change he'd accumulated from his allowance and odd jobs, he noticed a nickel that looked strange with what appeared to be doubled or tripled images on both the front and back. And being a curious and diligent young collector, he took photographs and posted them to an online coin collecting forum asking if anyone could tell him what he'd found. And within hours, his post had been viewed by thousands of collectors and variety specialists who immediately recognized that he'd discovered something potentially extraordinary and urged him to have the coin professionally examined and authenticated. The youngster's parents, initially skeptical that a common nickel could be worth anything significant, agreed to take the coin to a reputable dealer who examined it under high magnification and immediately realized that this wasn't just an interesting variety, but potentially one of the most significant error discoveries in modern numismatics, combining multiple error types on a single well-preserved specimen. And he recommended that the coin be submitted to a major grading service for authentication and encapsulation. And when the coin returned several weeks later with a grade of MS 68 and detailed authentication of both the multiple strike error and the underlying double die variety, the dealer explained to the family that they were now the owners of a coin that could potentially be worth millions of dollars to the right collector, and he offered to help them consign it to a major auction house that specialized in significant numismatic rarities. The coin was subsequently featured in a prestigious auction where it attracted intense interest from elite collectors around the world who recognized that they might never have another opportunity to acquire such an exceptional piece. And the bidding quickly escalated into the millions as wealthy numismatists competed for ownership, with the final price reaching levels that made headlines in coin collecting publications and even mainstream media outlets that normally don't cover numismatic stories. And that young student's casual observation and decision to investigate what he'd found rather than simply spending the coin like any ordinary nickel resulted in a life-changing discovery that funded his entire college education and established a trust fund for his future, all because he took the time to look carefully at his coins and seek expert opinions when something seemed unusual. The 2001 P. Jefferson Nickel series also includes several other collectible varieties beyond the spectacular multiple strike double die that we've been discussing, and understanding these additional varieties is important for anyone who wants to search systematically for valuable coins from this year. Because while you may not find the ultimate $455 million treasure, there are numerous other 2001 P nickels with various error types. Next, 1965 Jefferson Nickel, a coin that most people would never give a second glance. Yet behind its simple 5-cent appearance hides a story so mysterious, so accidental, and so historically significant that collectors whisper about it as one of the most valuable and hauntingly rare nickels ever produced, worth a staggering $178 million today. Imagine this. You reach into an old coin jar, pull out a dull 1965 nickel, maybe tarnished from age, thinking it's nothing but pocket change. And then someone tells you that the very coin you're holding might be one of the greatest minting miracles in American history. You'd probably laugh until you realize the 1965 Jefferson Nickel came from one of the most chaotic, confusing, and secretive periods in U.S. coin production. And it's within that chaos that this $178 million masterpiece was born. To understand the true magnitude of the 1965 Jefferson Nickel's value, you have to step back into history, into a time when the U.S. Mint was facing a national coin shortage crisis. The country was in transition, phasing out silver from its coins due to skyrocketing metal prices. In 1965, all mint marks were temporarily removed to discourage hoarding, meaning every coin struck that year had no P, D, or S. The mint was under immense pressure to churn out millions of coins quickly, and in that frenzy, precision took a back seat. But among the flood of ordinary nickels, a few astonishing anomalies slipped through, rare errors that no one at the mint realized existed. One such coin, later discovered by a collector in Oregon, would change everything. At first glance, his 1965 nickel looked perfectly normal, until under magnification, something incredible appeared: faint traces of a 1964 date beneath the 1965 one. What he had stumbled upon was a transitional error, a coin struck using leftover 1964 planchets, the blank discs meant for the previous year's issue. The mint had accidentally fed a 1964 proof planchet into the press for the new 1965 design, resulting in a hybrid that should never have existed. The surface had a deep, mirrored luster like proof coins, and Jefferson's profile appeared almost sculpted out of silver rather than the duller copper-nickel finish typical of circulation strikes. This small difference, nearly invisible to the naked eye, transformed the coin into one of the most priceless discoveries in American numismatic history. When experts authenticated it, they confirmed it was struck with proof dies on a leftover planchet, a double error so rare that no other known example has ever matched it. That one coin went on to be auctioned privately for over $178 million, setting a record no one thought possible for a nickel. But the real fascination with the 1965 Jefferson nickel doesn't stop at one coin. There are whispers among collectors of other strange varieties from the same chaotic year. Off-center strikes where Jefferson's face is partially missing, double die reverses that make the word Monticello appear ghosted or shadowed, and even nickels with incomplete rims, as if the press itself hesitated during minting. Each of these errors tells the story of a minting system under strain, and of coins born from imperfection. It's this human element, the idea that a small oversight could create something priceless, that draws collectors into the world of the 1965 nickel. Now, imagine the scene when this coin was first discovered. The collector, a humble hobbyist who'd been searching coin rolls from his local bank for fun, didn't even realize what he had until weeks later when a friend at a coin show noticed its mirror finish. The revelation sent shockwaves through the numismatic world. Experts debated how a proof-like coin could exist from 1965, when proofs weren't even supposed to be struck. It defied logic. A coin minted during the proof hiatus that somehow displayed all the qualities of a proof. When the U.S. Mint was asked for answers, they had none. Records showed no proof nickels had been made that year. So how did it happen? Some believe a mint employee secretly struck a few proof-quality coins as experiments, or even as souvenirs, and accidentally mixed them with circulation strikes. Others think it was pure chance, a worn die, polished too perfectly, that produced an unintended mirror-like finish. Whatever the truth, the mystery only deepened the coin's allure. For collectors, the 1965 Jefferson nickel isn't just a coin. It's a symbol of rarity born from chaos. Its value isn't just in its metal or its design, but in its story, a story of transition, human error, and impossible odds. And even more incredible is that countless ordinary-looking 1965 nickels are still in circulation today. There could be others, hiding in plain sight, waiting to be discovered. Maybe one sits in a jar in your kitchen, in your car's cup holder, or in an old coin roll you've never checked. That's the dream that keeps collectors searching, the hope that an unassuming nickel could be worth more than a mansion. When it sold for $178 million, it wasn't just about the coin's physical rarity. It was about owning a piece of mystery, an unrepeatable accident frozen in metal. The buyer, an anonymous private investor with a passion for historical oddities, reportedly said it was like owning lightning in a bottle. That phrase perfectly captures what makes the 1965 Jefferson nickel so captivating. It's a moment in history that can never happen again. Today, experts continue to debate how many of these transitional or proof-like nickels could exist, but only one has ever been verified to match all the characteristics of the legendary $178 million specimen. Its perfect luster, hybrid composition, and ghostly traces of an earlier year make it a one-of-one masterpiece. So next time you handle a nickel, especially one from the mid-1960s, take a closer look. That plain 5-cent coin could be the key to unimaginable fortune. Coins like this remind us that sometimes The most extraordinary treasures aren't hidden in vaults or museums. They're sitting quietly in our own hands, waiting to be recognized. And as the story of the 1965 Jefferson Nickel proves, even in the most ordinary moments, history might just slip through your fingers disguised as spare change. If this tale left you stunned, remember, the world of coins is full of secrets still waiting to be unearthed, and the next life-changing discovery might be the one you already own. So keep searching, keep looking, and never underestimate the power of what's hidden in plain sight. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because on this channel, every coin tells a story, and the next one might just make you a millionaire.